Manchester United launch FIFA appeal over Mazraoui AFCON controversy. The full story. Welcome to United Daily Updates, your most trusted source for Manchester United news and honest analysis. Before we dive into this controversial story, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We bring you real news, in-depth coverage, and the kind of analysis you will not find anywhere else. No fake stories. No clickbait. Just honest football journalism for true Manchester United fans. Today we need to talk about something that has made a lot of United fans very angry. Something that shows how unfairly our club can be treated. Something that highlights the problems with how football schedules work. Manchester United have launched an official appeal to FIFA. The reason? They feel they were unfairly penalised because Morocco refused to let Noussair Mazraoui play against Bournemouth while Ivory Coast and Cameroon allowed Amad Diallo and Bryan Mbeumo to feature in the same match. This is not just about one player missing one game. This is about fairness. This is about consistency. This is about whether the rules apply the same way to everyone or if some clubs get treated differently than others. Let me break down everything that happened, why United are so upset, and what this means for the club going forward. What actually happened against Bournemouth? Let me set the scene for you. Manchester United were preparing to face Bournemouth at Old Trafford on Monday, December 15th. This was always going to be a difficult match, but it became even more complicated because of the Africa Cup of Nations. 3 of United's key players were eligible to be called up by their countries for AFCON. Noussair Mazraoui for Morocco. Amad Diallo for Ivory Coast. Bryan Mbeumo for Cameroon. In the build-up to the match, Ruben Amorim was asked about their availability. Would these 3 players be allowed to play or would they have to leave early for international duty? Amorim refused to give a clear answer. He stayed quiet. He did not want to give Bournemouth any information about his team selection. This created tension and uncertainty. Fans did not know if United would have their full squad available or if they would be missing 3 important players. The media speculated constantly. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Then the team sheet was announced. And it showed something very interesting. Amad Diallo was in the starting lineup. Bryan Mbeumo was also starting. But there was no sign of Noussair Mazraoui anywhere. What had happened? Why were 2 of the 3 AFCON players available but not the 3rd? The answer came out quickly. Ivory Coast and Cameroon had given permission for their players to feature in the Bournemouth match. They agreed that Amad and Mbeumo could play for Manchester United one more time before reporting for international duty. But Morocco refused. They insisted that Mazraoui had to join them immediately. He was not allowed to play against Bournemouth. He had to leave Manchester and travel to Morocco right away. This put Manchester United at a massive disadvantage. They lost one of their most important players for a crucial match. And it happened because of an inconsistency in how different countries applied the same FIFA rule. The FIFA rule that started everything. Now let me explain the actual FIFA regulation that caused all this drama. Because understanding the rule is crucial to understanding why Manchester United feel so angry. FIFA has a regulation about when clubs must release players for international tournaments. For the Africa Cup of Nations 2025, the release date was set as December 15th. That means clubs have to let their players go to join their national teams on or after that date. December 15th happened to be a Monday. And Manchester United happened to be playing Bournemouth that evening. The match kicked off at 8 p.m. Here is where it gets complicated. Because the rule says players must be released on December 15th, but it does not specify an exact time. Does that mean midnight? Does it mean the start of the day? Does it mean clubs can keep players until the end of the day? Different countries interpreted this differently. Ivory Coast and Cameroon took a flexible approach. They said fine, let your players compete in their club match on the 15th and then they can join us afterwards. It is still technically the release date. Morocco took a stricter view. They said no, we want our player on the 15th and that means he cannot play in an evening match. He needs to be with us. Both interpretations are technically valid under the FIFA wording. But they led to completely different outcomes for Manchester United. Why United feel so unfairly treated? Let me explain exactly why Manchester United feel they got a raw deal here. Why they believe the situation was fundamentally unfair. First, look at the timing. If the Bournemouth match had been played on Saturday or Sunday like most Premier League games, there would have been no issue at all. Mazraoui could have played because the release date was Monday the 15th. He would have been available just like every other AFCON player for every other Premier League club. But because the match was scheduled for Monday evening, United lost a key player while other clubs did not face the same problem. The fixture scheduling put United at a disadvantage that no one else had to deal with. Second, look at the inconsistency. 2 countries allowed their players to feature. 1 country did not. Amad and Mbeumo played. Mazraoui did not. How is that fair? How does that make sense? If the rule was applied consistently across all three nations, fine. Either all three players would have been available or none of them would. But having two available and one not available because of different interpretations? That is fundamentally unfair. Third, United had no control over any of this. They did not choose when the match would be played. They did not make the FIFA regulations. They did not decide how Morocco would interpret those regulations. But they suffered the consequences. Imagine if Arsenal or Liverpool had been in the same situation. Imagine if Manchester City lost a key player because of fixture scheduling while their rivals kept all their players. There would be outrage. Everyone would agree it was unfair. That is exactly what happened to Manchester United. And that is why the club has launched an official appeal to FIFA. The details of United's appeal. So what exactly is Manchester United asking FIFA to do? What is the appeal actually about? According to reports from Sky Sports, United have formally raised an appeal regarding Morocco's refusal to allow Mazraoui to play against Bournemouth. The core argument is simple. United feel they were unfairly penalised compared to other Premier League clubs because of when their match was scheduled. If the Bournemouth game had been on the weekend, Mazraoui would have been eligible to play. Every other club with AFCON players got to use them in their weekend matches. But United played on Monday and lost that option. The appeal is not attacking Morocco. United officials have made it clear there is no animosity towards Mazraoui or the Moroccan national team. Everyone understands that countries want their players available as soon as possible for a major tournament. Mazraoui himself remained professional throughout the whole situation. He did not complain. He did not cause drama. He simply followed the instructions from his national team. United appreciate that he handled it well. The club is also appreciative of Ivory Coast and Cameroon. Those two nations showed flexibility and allowed Ahmad and Bumo to play. That helped United field a stronger team. The club has publicly thanked them for that cooperation. But United still believe the overall situation was unfair. They still think they were penalised for something outside their control. And they want FIFA to acknowledge that. What is United hoping to achieve with this appeal? Probably not much in practical terms. Mazraoui is gone to AFCON now. That cannot be changed. The Bournemouth match is over. The result stands. But United want to make a point. They want it on record that this was unfair. They want FIFA to think about how to prevent this happening again in the future. They want some acknowledgement that the system needs to be better. Why Morocco took a different approach. Now let me explain why Morocco acted differently from Ivory Coast and Cameroon. Because there is a specific reason that makes their position more understandable. Morocco are the host nation for AFCON 2025. The tournament is being held in Morocco. That is a huge honor and responsibility. As the host nation, Morocco have the opening match of the tournament. They play Comoros on Sunday, December 21st. That is just 6 days after the December 15th release date. Hosting the opening match puts extra pressure on Morocco. They need their players with them early. They need time to prepare. They need to organize media events and promotional activities. They need their squad together and focused. From Morocco's perspective, asking Mazraoui to play for Manchester United on Monday evening, then travel overnight, then arrive in Morocco on Tuesday and start preparing for a Sunday match was cutting it too close. They wanted him there sooner to make sure everything ran smoothly. Ivory Coast and Cameroon do not have that same pressure. They are not hosting. They do not have the opening match. They have more time before their first games. So they could afford to be flexible and let their players have one more club match. Does this excuse the inconsistency? Not really. The FIFA rule should apply the same way to everyone regardless of circumstances. But it does help explain why Morocco took the position they did. They were not trying to punish Manchester United. They were just prioritizing their own tournament preparations as host nation. It is understandable even if the outcome was unfair for United. How this affected the Bournemouth match. Now let me talk about how losing Mazraoui actually impacted Manchester United in that game against Bournemouth. The match ended 4-4. Yes, you read that right. 8 goals. Complete chaos. One of the wildest games in Premier League history. United were 2-1 up at half-time. They created 17 shots in the first half. The attack looked brilliant. But defensively they were a disaster. They kept giving away goals. They could not keep Bournemouth out. Mazraoui is primarily a right wing back or right back in Amorim's system. His absence meant United had to adjust their lineup. They moved players around to compensate. The defensive shape was not quite right. Would Mazraoui have made a difference? We can never know for sure. But he is one of United's most reliable defenders. He rarely makes mistakes. He is good positionally. He helps the team keep their shape. Having him available might have prevented one or two of those Bournemouth goals. And in a match that ended 4-4, preventing even one goal would have meant United won instead of drew. That is why missing him hurt so much. Not just because he is a good player, but because in such a high-scoring game where defensive solidity was desperately needed, his absence was felt. United earned 1 point from that match. If they had won, they would have earned 3 points. That is a 2-point swing. Over the course of a season, those small margins matter enormously. They can be the difference between qualifying for the Champions League or missing out. So when United look at missing Mazraoui unfairly, they are not just complaining about principle. They are complaining about points. About results. About real consequences that affect where they finish in the table. What other clubs dealt with. Let me give you some context by looking at how other Premier League clubs handled the AFCON situation. Because comparing United's experience to what others went through shows just how unfair it was. Arsenal had Thomas Partey, who is eligible for Ghana. But Ghana did not qualify for AFCON. So Arsenal had no issues at all. Liverpool had Mohamed Salah, who plays for Egypt. Egypt are in the tournament. But Liverpool's matches in that period were scheduled for the weekend. Salah was available for those games before leaving for AFCON. No problem. Chelsea had several African players. But again, their fixtures fell in a way that allowed them full availability for the weekend matches before the release date. Manchester City had a similar situation. Their AFCON players were available for weekend games before departing. Can you see the pattern? Every other club either had no AFCON players, or they had matches scheduled in a way that let them use those players right up until the release date. Only Manchester United got stuck with a Monday evening fixture that cost them a key player while others kept theirs. That is the unfairness United are highlighting. Not that they lost a player to AFCON. That is normal and expected. But that they lost him earlier than other clubs lost theirs purely because of fixture scheduling. If everyone had been in the same boat, fine. If all clubs with AFCON players had to release them before their weekend matches, United would accept that. But being the only club penalised? That stings. The bigger problem with fixture scheduling. This whole situation highlights a bigger problem with how football fixtures are scheduled in England. And it is something that has frustrated Manchester United and other big clubs for years. The Premier League schedules matches for television coverage. They want games spread across the whole weekend and into Monday to maximise viewership. That means some matches get moved from the traditional Saturday 3 p.m. slot to Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Monday evening, or even Friday night. When you are a big club like Manchester United, you get picked for TV constantly. Almost every United match gets moved for television. That means playing at awkward times. That means less rest between games sometimes. That means travel schedules get disrupted. Most of the time this is just a minor inconvenience. But occasionally it creates situations like this where the TV scheduling actively harms the club. Where playing on Monday instead of Saturday costs you a player you should have had available. United have complained about fixture scheduling before for different reasons. Too many games in a short period. Not enough rest. Unfair advantages given to rivals. This AFCON situation is just the latest example of how the schedule can hurt them. What is the solution? Hard to say. The Premier League will never give up on TV money. Broadcasting rights are worth billions of pounds. That means games will keep getting moved for television. Maybe FIFA needs clearer regulations. Maybe the release date should specify an exact time rather than just a date. Maybe there should be coordination between leagues and international federations to avoid these conflicts. But right now, clubs like Manchester United are stuck. They have to accept whatever fixture schedule they are given. And sometimes that schedule puts them at a disadvantage. How United coped without Mazraoui. Despite losing Mazraoui, Manchester United did make adjustments for the Bournemouth match. Let me explain how Ruben Amorim adapted his tactics and lineup. Without Mazraoui at right wing back, United shifted their formation slightly. They used Diogo Dalot in a different role. They brought in other players to compensate. The shape was not quite the same as usual, but they made it work. Amad Diallo played in a more advanced position on the right side of the attack. He was brilliant, scoring 1 goal and causing problems all game. Having him available thanks to Ivory Coast's flexibility was crucial. Bryan Mbeumo also started and contributed. He and Matheus Cunha led the line together. Mason Mount played on the left. Bruno Fernandes was in midfield pulling strings. The attack functioned well. As I mentioned, United had 17 shots in the first half. They created chances. They scored goals. Going forward was not the problem. The issue was defensive. Without Mazraoui's stability at the back, United looked vulnerable. They conceded 4 goals. They could not keep their shape when Bournemouth attacked. The balance was off. Amorim did his best with the players available. But you could see Mazraoui was missed. Not just for what he does individually, but for how he helps the team function as a unit. This is the challenge managers face when key players are unavailable. You can adjust tactics. You can move people around. But sometimes there is just no perfect replacement for a specific player in a specific role. The timing could not be worse for United. Let me talk about why the timing of this AFCON tournament is particularly bad for Manchester United right now. The club is in transition. Ruben Amorim only joined in November. He is still implementing his ideas. Still getting players to understand his system. Still figuring out his best 11. Losing 3 players to AFCON in the middle of this process is really disruptive. Just when things were starting to click. Just when players were getting comfortable with the tactics. Suddenly 3 important pieces are gone for weeks. Mazraoui has been a key player under Amorim. The manager rates him highly. He fits the system perfectly. Now he is gone until Morocco either get eliminated from AFCON or the tournament ends. Amad Diallo has been one of United's best performers this season. Losing him is a huge blow. He brings pace, skill, and goals. Finding someone to replace that production is not easy. Bryan Mbeumo has made a good impact since joining in the summer. He offers a different option up front. Another player Amorim will miss. All of this comes at a time when United are fighting to get into the top 4. Every point matters. Every match is crucial. Losing 3 players right now makes an already difficult job even harder. The fixture list does not get easier either. After Bournemouth came Aston Villa away. Then other tough matches. This is a period where United need their full squad available. Instead they are down to the bare bones. That is why United are so frustrated. Not just about the Mazraoui situation specifically, but about the whole timing of AFCON and how it affects their season at such a critical moment. What happens next with the appeal? So what can we expect to happen with Manchester United's appeal to FIFA? What is the likely outcome? To be completely honest, probably not much. FIFA rarely overturn these kinds of decisions. The rules were followed technically even if the application was inconsistent. Morocco had the right to demand their player on the release date. United are not going to get compensation. They are not going to get points back. The Bournemouth result stands as a 4-4 draw no matter what FIFA decides. But that does not mean the appeal is pointless. Sometimes making a formal complaint is about setting precedent. About getting your position on record. About forcing organizations to think about their policies. If FIFA acknowledge that the situation was handled poorly, that might lead to rule changes in the future. Maybe they will specify exact release times rather than just dates. Maybe they will coordinate better with domestic leagues about fixture scheduling. Even if nothing concrete changes, United have made their point. They have publicly stated that they were treated unfairly. Other clubs will take note. If similar situations arise in future, there will be more pressure on FIFA to handle them better. The appeal also sends a message to Morocco and other national teams. It says that clubs will push back when they feel hard done by. That might make countries think twice before taking the strictest possible interpretation of release rules. Will any of this actually change anything? Hard to say. Football governance is complicated and slow to adapt. But at least United are fighting rather than just accepting unfair treatment quietly. How long will United be without these players? Let me give you an idea of how long Manchester United will be without Mazraoui, Amad, and Mbeumo. Because the length of absence depends on how far their countries go in AFCON. The tournament starts on December 21st with Morocco versus Comoros. It runs through to mid-January with the final scheduled for January 18th. If Morocco, Ivory Coast, and Cameroon all have short tournaments and get eliminated in the group stages, United could have their players back fairly quickly. Maybe by early January. But if any of these nations go deep into the tournament, United could be without those players for a month or more. If Morocco reach the final as host nation, Mazraoui would not rejoin United until late January at the earliest. That is a long time to be without key players. Especially when every match matters in the race for Champions League qualification. Amorim has said the team needs to adapt. They need to find ways to win without these players. They need other people to step up and fill the gaps. Kobbie Mainoo will likely get more responsibility. Mason Mount needs to maintain his good form. Matheus Cunha will be crucial leading the attack. The younger players might get opportunities. This is a test of the squad's depth. A test of whether United have enough quality throughout the team or if they rely too heavily on a few key individuals. Other clubs have dealt with AFCON absences before. Liverpool coped without Salah and Mané in previous tournaments. Chelsea managed when their African players left. United need to show the same resilience. But it would have been easier if they had not lost Mazraoui for the Bournemouth match unnecessarily. If they had been given the same treatment as other clubs. That is the frustration at the heart of this whole situation. What United fans think about this? The reaction from Manchester United fans to this whole situation has been overwhelmingly angry. And you can understand why. On social media, fans have been expressing their frustration about the unfairness. Why should United be penalised for fixture scheduling? Why did Morocco refuse when other nations allowed it? Why does this kind of thing always seem to happen to United? Some fans are directing anger at the Premier League for scheduling the Bournemouth match on Monday. If it had been a Saturday or Sunday game, this whole issue would not have existed. Others are frustrated with FIFA for having vague regulations that allow for inconsistent interpretation. If the release date rule was clearer, there would be no room for different countries to handle it differently. Some fans appreciate that United have launched the appeal. They see it as the club standing up for itself rather than just accepting unfair treatment. Even if nothing changes, at least United are fighting. But there is also realism among supporters. Most fans understand that the appeal probably will not achieve anything concrete. They know Mazraoui is gone for AFCON regardless. They know the Bournemouth result cannot be changed. The anger is more about the principle of the thing. About fairness. About feeling like Manchester United always get the rough end of the stick when it comes to these situations. There is a sense among the fanbase that if this had happened to Liverpool or Manchester City, there would be more outrage in the media. More pressure on FIFA to do something. But because it is United, people shrug and move on. Whether that perception is accurate or not, it reflects how the fanbase feels. Frustrated. Hard done by. Sick of being treated unfairly. The lessons for future tournaments. Looking ahead, what lessons can be learned from this situation? How can similar problems be avoided in future tournaments? First, FIFA needs clearer regulations. Saying players must be released on a specific date without specifying a time leaves too much room for interpretation. Be more precise. Say players must be released by midnight on the date, or by noon, or give a specific hour. Remove the ambiguity. Second, there needs to be better coordination between FIFA, continental federations, and domestic leagues. When setting international release dates, consider when league matches are scheduled. Try to avoid conflicts where some clubs are disadvantaged. Third, national teams need to be consistent with each other. If Ivory Coast and Cameroon are allowing players to feature in matches on the release date, Morocco should do the same unless there is a compelling reason not to. Create guidelines that ensure fairness across the board. Fourth, leagues like the Premier League should be more careful about fixture scheduling around international breaks and tournaments. If they know AFCON is coming and there is a release date, do not schedule matches that conflict with it. And fifth, clubs need to be more proactive. United could have tried to negotiate with Morocco earlier. They could have offered to get Mazraoui to Morocco faster if he was allowed to play. They could have explored options rather than just accepting the situation. Will any of these lessons actually be implemented? Probably not all of them. But if even one or two changes are made for future tournaments, this whole situation will have served a purpose. The impact on United's season. Let me talk about how this AFCON period could affect Manchester United's entire season. Because losing 3 players for potentially a month is a big deal. United are currently in a fight for a top 4 finish. The competition is fierce. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Newcastle are all competing for Champions League places. Every point matters. If United struggle during the AFCON period and drop points in winnable matches, it could cost them a top 4 spot at the end of the season. And missing out on Champions League football would be a disaster financially and for recruitment. On the other hand, if other players step up and United actually cope well without Mazraoui, Ahmad and Mbeumo, it could show the squad has real depth. It could give confidence to fringe players. It could prove they are not reliant on just a few individuals. Amram's reputation is also on the line. Can he adapt his tactics when key players are missing? Can he get results with a weakened squad? These are the tests that define whether a manager is good or great. The Bournemouth match showed both sides. United attacked brilliantly without Mazraoui, creating 17 first-half shots. But they also defended poorly, conceding 4 goals. If they can find a balance in upcoming matches, they will be fine. The worry is that the defensive issues continue. That without Mazraoui's solidity, United keep leaking goals. That the lack of Ahmad's pace and Mbeumo's presence up front leads to struggle scoring. January will tell us a lot about this Manchester United team. Whether they sink or swim without their AFCON players. whether they are a team on the rise or still a work in progress that needs more time and more signings. Final thoughts on the controversy. The Noussair Mazraoui situation is frustrating on multiple levels. It is frustrating because of the unfairness. It is frustrating because of the inconsistency. It is frustrating because it was entirely preventable. Manchester United were put in a position where they lost a key player not because of injury, not because of poor planning, but because of fixture scheduling and inconsistent application of international regulations. They are right to launch an appeal to FIFA. Even if nothing comes of it practically, the club needs to stand up for itself. They need to make noise when they are treated unfairly. They need to ensure their voice is heard. Will FIFA change anything? Probably not in the short term. But maybe, just maybe, this will plant a seed. Maybe when the next major international tournament comes around, the regulations will be clearer. The coordination will be better. The fairness will be improved. Morocco were within their rights to demand Mazraoui on December 15th. But Ivory Coast and Cameroon showed that flexibility was possible. That cooperation between clubs and countries can work if there is goodwill on both sides. The biggest victims here are Manchester United and their fans. They lost a player unfairly. They dropped points partly because of that absence. They are now facing a tough period without three important players. But there is also an opportunity for other players to prove themselves, for the team to show resilience and depth, for Amorim to demonstrate his tactical flexibility. How United respond to this adversity will tell us a lot about their character, about their mentality, about whether they are mentally strong enough to compete at the highest level. Sometimes football is unfair. Sometimes you get bad luck. Sometimes the rules work against you. What matters is how you react, whether you use it as an excuse or as motivation. Manchester United have every right to feel aggrieved about the Mazraoui situation. But they also need to move forward. Focus on the matches ahead. Find solutions. Get results even with a weakened squad. That is what the great Manchester United teams of the past always did. When faced with adversity, they fought harder. They found a way. They refused to use problems as excuses for failure. This current team needs to show that same spirit, that same determination, that same refusal to accept defeat. Stay updated with United Daily Updates. That is everything you need to know about Manchester United's FIFA appeal regarding Noussair Mazraoui and the AFCON controversy. From what happened in the Bournemouth match to why United feel so unfairly treated, we have covered every angle. This is the kind of detailed, honest coverage you get from United Daily Updates. We do not just repeat headlines. We break down the full story. We give you context and analysis. We help you understand what is really happening at our club. If you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do it right now. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. We cover every development at Manchester United with the depth and detail it deserves. We will continue following this appeal story. If FIFA respond, you will hear about it here first. If there are any developments with Mazraoui or the other AFCON players, we will keep you updated. We will also be covering how United cope without these three players over the coming weeks. Which players step up? What tactical changes Amorim makes? Whether the team can maintain their push for Champions League football. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Do you agree with United's decision to appeal? Was Morocco right to refuse, or should they have been flexible like Ivory Coast and Cameroon? How do you think United will cope without Mazraoui, Ahmad and Bumo? I read every comment. Your opinions matter. We are a community of Manchester United fans who care about our club and want to discuss everything that affects it. Together we will get through this AFCON period. We will support the team through the challenges. We will celebrate when players step up and deliver. And we will hopefully welcome Mazraoui, Ahmad and Bumo back with trophies when their country's tournaments end. Thank you for reading this in-depth breakdown. I hope it gave you a complete understanding of the situation and why it matters. See you in the next update with more Manchester United news and analysis. Glory, glory, Man United. Let's hope the appeal makes FIFA think twice about fairness in the future.